starting to talk about how quick things are gonna go, but we wouldn't.
Yes, we are.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council to order. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Announcements. Excuse me. So, by way of announcements, upcoming town council meetings, Thursday, February 10th at 7 p.m. will be a regular meeting here in this room, as well as Thursday, February 24th. And then Wednesday, March 9th at 7 p.m. in the all-purpose room at James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School located at 22 Babusick Lake Road, which will be the deliberative session, the first part of our annual meeting. That's Wednesday, March 9th, 7 p.m. Be there. Did you have anything, Paul?
Thank you, Mr. J. Yes. Starting Tuesday, February 1st, there will be a change in what is accepted as part of the single stream recycling. We will no longer be able to accept number 3, number 4, number 6, or number 7 plastics. Those plastics should be disposed of in the trash stream. We will still accept plastics that are number 1, 2, and 5. Any questions, visit the town's website, Department of Public Works, Solid Waste. Filing period for town offices to be elected at town meeting being held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 is Wednesday, February 23rd through Friday, February 4th.
Wait, say that again?
March. Did I say February 4th? Didn't
Yeah.
I? Yeah, sorry. Let me repeat the whole thing. It's been a long month of January. The filing period for office to be elected at town meeting being held on Tuesday, April 12th, 2022 is Wednesday, February 23rd through Friday, March 4th at 5 p.m. The Department of Environmental Services will be holding a PFAS virtual public meeting for Merrimack, Litchfield, and Londonderry, Bedford, Manchester on Wednesday, February 2nd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. For more information, please check out the town's website. I did not post this because I did not want to confuse people because the meeting that was happening tonight. So I will post this on the town's website starting tomorrow. It'll hit our this town social media starting tomorrow and be pushed out. With the
Yeah, just repeat what that was, or explain what that is, sorry.
The Department of Environmental Services will be holding a PFAS virtual public meeting, basically to talk about PFAS and what's going on and what PFAS is and studies that are surrounding PFAS. The time is from 6:30 on February 2nd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. With the impending snowstorm, we are taking in our electronic message boards, the one that's at Watson and the one that's at the South Fire Station. We don't
North
want
Fire
them to get banged up with or plowed in. However, on Monday morning after the snow, we're going to put them back out to notify people of this meeting. I will forward the email that I received on this meeting. I thought I did already, but I will forward it out to everybody. One last note. There is one more meeting that the council needs to have. We
Right.
talked about whether we want to do February 3rd or February 8th. February 3rd is next Thursday. I will have an answer for the 2 union contracts by that date, hopefully. February 8th is the Tuesday, is the last day to ratify union contracts. So it is up to the town council which day they would like to meet, but I do need to have a meeting between now and February 8th.
So the one concern with February 8th would be it is the last day, and if it snows heavy,
We have to do it.
we could be here tromping through the snow in our boots, and but we have to have the meeting.
We have to have it, and that has happened in the past.
Nothing. So what's the desire of the council? Next Thursday would be a regular Thursday then, if you would. And the room's available and stuff, I'm sure, and
Oh, we'll
not
make it available.
conflicting. Well, yeah. The,
One of the conference rooms will be available, either the Memorial Room or here on next Thursday, the 3rd, if you want to do
the
the 3rd.
planning board is the 1st and 15th, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, Robert Price is in the audience, and
Okay.
he's agreeing that it's the 1st and the 15th.
Okay.
I don't usually think of it.
So
that
does anybody have a preference?
way. No.
I think if it can be, Nancy?
Yeah, I have a conflict, a NAMI presentation on the 3rd, unless we did it like 7:30, but other than that, either date works for me. You're talking about the 3rd or the 8th, right?
Yeah, 3rd or the 8th.
Right. So I just have a presentation.
Why couldn't it be a different night than the 8th?
It could be the
It could be
Monday,
the 7th,
7th, I guess.
or the 4th, or over the weekend.
We could all come in at 2 in the morning on Saturday.
That would be transparent.
We're taped.
I just think it's a quick turnaround. You may or may not
Have
have
an
the
answer.
ratification done on the 3rd, so we would have to do it later anyway, right?
Yeah, it would be a 7 o'clock meeting on the 3rd. And remember, I'm bringing forward the revenues that you asked for
Right,
last
So
night.
no matter when it is,
Right,
that's gonna occur.
right.
But I mean, the 3rd, you may not, there's a possibility you won't be ready. We won't be ready to do the contracts.
There's a potential if we have snow on the 2nd.
So you're being optimistic that it will be.
Yeah. Yes.
So what I'm saying is, why not the 7th?
Is the school board meeting on the 7th? Do we know? I mean, we could always meet in the other room, but,
Yeah, we can always meet down in the other room.
I think they would be the 7th, because I think they're the 1st and 3rd, we're the 2nd and 4th.
oh, okay.
So they would not be the 7th.
The
think they
7th would be
the
the
7th.
first,
Oh,
First- the first
oh,
one.
I'm sorry, I'm
first
looking
Monday.
incorrectly, okay. Whatever, I'm available either one, so. What's your pleasure? What's your preference? Nobody wants to commit.
No,
Ron, you said you had a
honestly,
coin?
either way, if we meet on the 3rd, it's fine. If we meet on the 8th, it's fine. Just know that we are meeting on the 8th no matter what.
Well, we are?
Well, if we don't
Oh,
meet,
oh, if-
we are meeting no matter what if we meet on the 8th.
Right. Can't do it.
You can't do it any other way. We have to do it.
Yeah, I would say let's do the 3rd, and if we have to postpone it, then we will, to either the 7th or the 8th.
And we can definitely.
We'll have plenty of time to post that and.
Yeah, we have plenty of time. We post it tomorrow, and that would be plenty of time. And if the ratification, we can always flip the agenda too and have the revenues first and ratification second. So Councilor Murphy can be here for the
That's a good idea.
ratifications. On that, we can go at 7. Okay, is that what we're doing? February 3rd
Yeah,
at 7?
February 3rd at 7, is that okay with you,
2,
Nancy?
3,
Yep.
7 PM. Okay, thank you.
So, Thursday, February 3rd, 7 o'clock. Be there.
That was all I had for announcements.
Okay, thanks. Back to me. Comments from the press and public? Seeing none. Recognitions, resignations, and retirements, we have none. Appointments, we have none. Public hearing. So we have 2 public hearings scheduled for tonight. The first one is a public hearing on a milfoil grant funds for Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake, submitted by the Planning and Zoning Administrator Robert Price. The town council will hold a public hearing to consider the acceptance and authorize the expenditure of up to $16,900 for milfoil treatments program at Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake, of which $8,450 comes from a grant from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for milfoil control, and the town's matching share is $8,450 to be funded from the milfoil expendable capital reserve fund, and to authorize the town manager or his designee to execute any and all documents which may be necessary. This request represents funding to allow for treatment if milfoil in Horseshoe Pond and Natticook, for treatment of milfoil in Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake in 2022.
So tonight, I asked Robert to come for the milfoil. We have a couple of new council members who have not heard about the milfoil program before, so I thought it would be good to hear about it. This is something we always do around this time of year in January, February for the milfoil at Natticook Lake and Horseshoe Pond. So I have Robert here to explain the program and what really gets done with the program on behalf of the two new counselors and the public.
Go for it.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, thank you.
So, as many of you know, milfoil we've been treating in the town on Natticook Lake and Horseshoe Pond since 2012. Each year, it's done by a choice of either herbicidal treatment or DASH, which is diver-assisted suction harvesting. This past year, as you saw in the materials I prepared, only DASH methods were used, and we are only proposing, or DES is only proposing DASH for both water bodies as well next year. In the more recent past, the matching grant from the state has dropped down to a 40% level, but this year we're fortunate is it back up to a 50% level. That's why the funds are evenly distributed between the two entities, town and the state. So I'm simply here tonight just to request that you vote to expend money out of the milfoil capital reserve fund to continue the program for 2022.
And I would like to thank the members of the Natticook Lake area because they really make the DASH program work a lot more efficiently. They go out, they mark, they know what milfoil looks like, they mark the milfoil, they're out there when the divers are there, and they're pointing to this is the area, and the divers can actually go down there and use time where they're not searching for it, that's been located for them, and it's more efficient. So I would like to thank them to do that, and I would hope that they would continue to do that. And they really have taken a proactive approach in Natticook Lake to try to eradicate milfoil as best as possible.
Okay. As Robert mentioned, we've been doing this this will be our 10th year, I guess, trying to get some kind of handle or control on it. So are there any questions or comments? Lon?
Yes, are we still, are there still volunteers checking boats and watercraft coming into the areas prior to them being put into the lake?
I'm not aware of anybody checking anything on the ground.
Thank you. The only reason I ask is I believe in the past there were a couple of volunteers that were looking at boat trailers and whatever.
Yeah, and there are, I don't know, I think state guidance that people should inspect their boats and trailers and things, because just a little piece moved from one water body to another will start an entire infestation in that other water body. So, and it survives. It can dry up and shrivel and will come right back to life once it goes into the water again. So it has a long life expectancy survival rate.
I think the Natticook Lake Association, I think is what they call themselves, I think they were the ones who were checking boats, but I believe there's signage at the locations, the boat launches. Just warning people, and I think most boat owners do kind of take it pretty seriously. The infestation is terrible. I've not seen it, not gone out to see it at Natticook or Babusick, Horseshoe,
Pond.
but I have seen it in one of the Finger Lakes, and it's terrible. You can't use the water. This stuff was just so thick that you wouldn't want to be in it. It just was nasty. So I was never excited about this in the early stages, but I fully embrace the milfoil treatment now. We want to do it.
Okay, any other questions? There's a recommended motion in the documentation here.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. This is a public hearing, so we do
Oh,
need
it's a
to,
public
we
hearing,
do
you're
need to
right.
open it up to the
Sorry,
audience.
Thank you. So we'll open this up for a public hearing. It's 7:18. Anybody that wants to make a comment or talk about it should come forward. Um, Yeah, I really appreciate that people are paying attention at home, and it's more difficult for them to communicate. So when we have public hearings, we need you to be here. So we're going to call it 7:19. We'll close the public hearing, and now we'll look for a motion on page 2 of 2. Suggest a motion from somebody.
Yeah, Lon.
Lon?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to accept and authorize the expenditure of up to $16,900 for milfoil treatment program at Horseshoe Pond and Natticook Lake, of which $8,450 is from a grant from NHDES for milfoil control, and the town's matching share is $8,450 to be funded from the Milfoil Expendable Capital Reserve Fund. And furthermore, the town council authorizes the town manager or their designee to execute any and all documents which may be necessary.
Awesome. Motion by Lon Woods. Is there a second? Finley?
Yep.
Second by Finley. Is there any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, you will.
And so now we have another public hearing, number 2 in our agenda. A public hearing about disposal rates of solid waste submitted by Public Works Director Kyle Fox. The town council will hold a public hearing prior to the implementation of a new fee schedule for the disposal of solid waste. The Public Works Department is recommending changes to the fee schedule for commercial trash, construction, and demolition in accordance with chapters 163-4 of the Merrimack Town Code.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Kyle. The reason why this is back in front of the council, we had the discussion about tipping fees. Well, Charter Article 163-4, not charter, ordinance, it's town ordinance 163-4, states that before any new tipping fees would be implemented, the town council would hold a public hearing. So since we talked about tipping fees and we went through the discussion of the tipping fees and came up with amounts, now we're back in front of the council, kind of as a housekeeping issue, to present this in a public hearing to the public for their comment on the tipping fees. And then we can implement 30 days, Kyle? 30
Minimum
days.
of 30 days after publication in a newspaper.
Right, so,
Is that after the public hearing or just after?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes, so,
go ahead, Kyle.
so I'm recommending that we make the new rates effective March 15th, 2022, to allow us time to get it to the union leader for publication.
okay. Do you want
And
to talk
I don't have
about,
anything else to add.
well, just talk about what the rate change is
Sure.
before we open the public hearing?
Okay, sure. Back on December 2nd, we had a really good discussion about the rate changes that were being proposed by Public Works. And the reason for those rate changes are increased costs from our vendors. The vendor our previous vendor took both our solid waste, our trash, and our construction and demolition. At the conclusion of that contract, they decided they couldn't provide us service for construction and demolition because it turned out they were sending it, or they were subsidizing our cost to the facility that it was going to. And they didn't want to do that anymore. So we're now contracting with the company for our demolition, the same company we've been bringing it to, but we're just going directly to them. So the commercial trash went up significantly, and what we're proposing is an increase in $11 per ton, from $122 per ton to $133 per ton for trash, commercial trash. And for construction and demolition, we're proposing $122, it was $122, as I said, and that's now gonna be $150 per ton. One of the questions that came up with the employees when I was, talking about the new program and having two different rates now, it's been simple if people bring mixed loads and, it's just one rate. What we're gonna proceed with, once the new rates are in, we always require people to separate their loads. They don't always do it. So now if they refuse to separate their loads, we're gonna charge them the higher rate of the two. So that's how we plan to move forward with that.
But, so when do these rates apply? These are commercial rates? Or
So-
after the first,
Yeah, so for trash, it's commercial trash only. Residential trash is always free. For demolition, it's all commercial demolition and any residential demolition that's over 1,000 pounds in the load.
okay. But it's all commercial. So if there's not any questions from the council, we'll open the public hearing at 7:24. And Barbara?
Just to reiterate for everybody, how will you know what is commercial versus what is residential?
So
I know
that,
that's,
yeah, that's our challenge. And we talked about that a little bit on December 2nd. And, following that meeting, I had a really good meeting with my folks. And they shared some frustrations, I'll be honest. Because their difficulty is, we get a lot of people that say, they're just doing a project at their mom's house. And, we see the tools in the back of the truck and, it doesn't really pass the sniff test, but, we're not investigators. And it's really hard for us to navigate that kind of challenge. So we are on the side of benefiting the resident that's there. So that's our challenge. Did I answer your question, or did I get straight? I'm sorry.
Lon?
I dealt with that challenge for a while.
You did.
Yes.
I will say that the small construction companies or outfits are very aware and very concerned about keeping their reputation in the community intact. And to use common language, they're not about cheating us in terms of commercial demolition or commercial waste, specifically construction material. And I don't think I was any more bright or aware or whatever than anybody else that might have that job. And you get to know who the bad apples are. And they're not, and the percentage isn't any higher. It's just Woods' opinion over about a 10-year span out there. The percentage of cheaters isn't any higher than the residents who used to try to bend rules as well. So I understand the frustration, but I don't think it's a major problem. Is that a fair?
It's hard to encapsulate how big a problem it is, because we're going to err on the side of not getting into the argument with a resident.
Finley?
Thanks, Tom. Kyle, just so I understand you, when he says he's doing it for his mother, he still has to pay if it's over 500 pounds, is that not correct?
1,000 pounds.
1,000 pounds.
Yes, a half a ton, yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so it's, it's the 75 or whatever dollars that we're losing if it's more than the 1,000 he pays for the whole thing, or she.
Well, the way some people do it is they'll bring 3 or 4 loads in at 900 pounds each load. So it can add up.
Sure.
But as I said to my folks, it's town council's decision. It is a public relations issue, clearly. And, it is a nice amenity for those who use it, absolutely. And totally understand that.
So for commercial, they're still at that 1,000-pound limit?
Yes.
The first 1,000 pounds is free or whatever?
No. Commercial is from pound 1.
Okay, so if they
Yeah.
come in with 900 pounds, they're still supposed to pay,
They would pay for
For
the
the
900
900
pounds. Yeah.
okay. That's what so even if they split it, to say that they're residents and not commercial, that's, yeah, okay. They still should have paid it because they're commercial.
Correct.
Nancy?
I understand the frustration, and part of me wants to say, what can we do about it? But I've not heard any options.
Well,
Would that
the
be
option I
accurate?
presented on December 2nd was to have everybody pay for demolition material from pound 1.
So there would be no difference between residential versus commercial?
Correct.
Okay.
Which
And-
is how most towns operate.
But you also did point out that if somebody's throwing a 2x4 in, that by not having a small number of poundage that is let go for free, you'd have somebody saying, he just threw demolition,
Yeah.
and you don't want to go through the scale for a 2x4.
And that creates, that puts you into a position of having to be a judge, which is a very difficult position to be in.
Sure. And the guys deal with a lot up there every day.
Right.
Uh,
We don't want to add on
we would
to it.
handle that challenge just fine.
Paul?
I think Councilor Woods sat there for at least 10 years that I know of. You get to know the truck as it comes in. And it's, oh, I'm doing it for XYZ. Oh, I'm doing it for this. I'm doing it for that. And I remember the foreman before the current one used to follow some of these trucks around town to look at. I'm not suggesting that we do that now, but he used to follow them around because of that. So you might get onesie, twosies that might be skating it, but if they keep coming in week after week, you get to know these vehicles, you get to know who's doing construction jobs and what they're doing them for, and things of that sort. And you understand, you're not talking about somebody who's coming in every week saying, oh, I'm doing it for my mother, or I'm doing it for my aunt, or I'm doing it for my uncle at that point, because if they're coming in every week, you're like, no,
It's obvious.
the sniff test doesn't work. You might get the onesie, twosie guys that will say that, but being there as they come over the scale, you'll hear the same story and be like, hey, wait a second. Didn't you just do this a month ago saying you were working for your mother?
Right. Okay.
That's
If-
just my opinion on the matter.
If I may,
Yes?
I was once told that demolition material of a sizable proportion was coming into the Merrimack transfer station from 2 Arbor Street, which is my address. Over a short period of time, that person's privileges for using our facility was
We're
no longer
vacated.
his. And
Fine.
there were 3 or 4 other occasions where, not anything that direct to me, but where, as Kyle and as Paul has pointed out, we made ourselves aware and then the violators aware, and there is that bit of policing, generic, term that you can use, and I have to believe it's still going on out there. So it's problematic, it's not ethical, it's not right, but on the other hand, we didn't have any badges.
Right.
We had the town seal on our shirt.
Exactly,
That was it.
exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. So I did open the public hearing. I don't see anybody coming forward to speak to this. If anybody does want to come forward, they should do so right now. I don't hear anybody on the stairs. So we'll close the public hearing at 7:34. And do we need a motion to approve? Nancy?
I was gonna make a motion.
Okay.
That's okay. Motion for the town council per town code section 163-4 to accept the DPW's proposed new fees for commercial disposal of solid waste, construction and demolition, and commercial single-stream recycling, and that the new rates become effective on March 15th, 2022, allowing the 30 days for publication in the newspaper as required by town code section 163-4D.
Second.
Motion by Nancy Murphy and seconded by Barbara Healy. Any other questions? Everybody clear? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Kyle.
Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
night.
I don't have any legislative updates. Did anybody receive anything? Okay. So seeing no counselors, no representatives in the audience. Town managers report.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything for you tonight.
Oh, man.
I know you're all disappointed.
We have no consent agenda or old business to cover tonight. Under new business, number 1, acceptance of a sponsorship donation to the town of Merrimack's 30th Annual Winter Carnival, submitted by Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. The town council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a sponsorship donation in the amount of $1,220 from Monahan Companies to the Parks and Rec Department to be used towards the town of Merrimack's 30th Annual Winter Carnival event on Saturday, February 26th, and serve as a sponsor of the ice carving demonstration and caricature artist pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. Paul, I'm guessing you're taking this one?
Yeah, it's kind of self-explanatory in the description. Monahan Companies generously has donated to donate $1,220 to be used. Hopefully, we'll have a lot of snow by the 26th of February, and a pond that's frozen, Natticook Lake that's frozen, so that we can enjoy the outdoor festivities of our winter carnival, our 30th anniversary of our winter carnival. So.
Okay. Sounds great. Any questions or comments? We have a motion to accept that donation
So moved.
with thanks from Monahan Companies. Moved by Lon Wood, seconded by Finley Rothaus. If there are no other, Lon, you want to talk to it?
I would just like to thank the Monahan Company.
Did you turn your mic off?
I'd like to thank the Monahan Company for their generous donation.
Awesome. Thank you. That certainly will help to bring out the annual winter carnival. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0. Next on the agenda is another page. Hang on a second. First Church of Merrimack lease agreement review and discussion submitted by town manager Paul McCallie. The town council to review and discuss a lease agreement with First Church of Merrimack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the audience is Greg Ross. He's the gentleman from the First Church of Merrimack that I've been dealing with negotiating this lease. Bringing forward a lease agreement for the First Church. We've always had a handshake agreement.
If you want to come join us, you're welcome to. Thanks.
We've always had a handshake agreement with John O'Leary and the First Church to use their parking lot. over the years, there's been some written communications back and forth, such as requesting not to be used on the church parking lot, not to be used on Sunday, and plowing and things of that sort of the parking lot, and repair of a fence between the two properties and items like that. And it's always been a handshake. Mr. Ross brought it to our attention. They would really like something a little more formal with the town of Merrimack, and I kind of agreed in this time of everything going on with handshakes, and the people who have made those handshakes are really no longer in town for one reason or another. So basically, it's a standard lease agreement to use the parking lot for the town of Merrimack, to the John O'Leary Adult Community Center use the parking lot except on Sundays, or for the church. In addition, John O'Leary can use can use their facility as they deem fit, as long as it doesn't interfere with the church event or a Sunday service for rentals or functions for the adult community. And on the occasions that an event does come up, the church will give us notification at the beginning of each month of the event for that month, and vice versa. John O'Leary will give the church notification each month of events that are coming up. And that's been going on for years, and that was all part of the handshake agreement, the back and forth. The church will give, at the beginning of the year, they'll give all their church holidays so they can mark them off on a calendar so that no events do get planned for those days, because sometimes you might get a baby shower or something coming on, and you don't know that it's a church holiday, or it doesn't trigger in your mind that date's a church holiday. So if we have them up front, the coordinator of John O'Leary can cross those days out to make sure no activities do happen at that time. The one thing, other thing in here is that's kind of new, is that there in 1989, January of 1989, there was terms given that the town gave the First Church right to first refusal if we ever sold the property. In this negotiation, I asked that if the church ever decides to sell any of the property, they give the town that option of right to first refusal on that property as well. So we came to that agreement as well. Some of the things that we were doing in consideration for this lease is it's a $1 a year lease that John O'Leary does pay to the First Church. The town will be responsible for plowing and maintaining the parking lot of the First Church. And one of the reasons why the plowing and the maintenance is we use it, and we want it kept to a certain standard so that our seniors who are parking there can have access to the facility, and we feel comfortable as they walk across the parking lot that they're not going to slip on snow, or if there's a crack or something of that sort, that it does get fixed. So that's why we have done this. We have done these leases before with other facilities in town. So this is nothing new. We actually used another lease that we do have with a neighboring property of Town Hall, and that's how we came up with this information. It's been vetted by the town attorneys, and they're fine with the language. All the insurances are there, all the indemnifications are there to protect the town. Any
Okay.
questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
You're holding your hand up, so I don't know whether it's from. Any other, do you want to add anything to that? Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Could you just make sure the mic's on, please? There you go.
And just
tap
announce your name for the record. Just-
Yeah, Greg Ross, First Church of Merrimack.
Thanks.
I appreciate Paul's help. We've been communicating on this for a better part of a year or so,
Yeah.
and not his fault. We've been just kind of doing it slowly, but the board at First Church has agreed and has reviewed it, and we're prepared to move forward with it.
And John O'Leary's also, the John O'Leary Center, Steve, has reviewed it as well.
Okay. One other thing you didn't mention was that the First Church can use the John O'Leary Center at no cost. I think you didn't mention that. Maybe you did.
No, I did not mention, I'm sorry.
As long as it's approved by the directors
Correct.
of the O'Leary Center.
Right, and I don't
was-
believe they've used it at all. That's just in case they
They need it. For
they need it.
space or
Something happens in the church where, I hate to say it, a pipe burst, they need to use the facility, you know.
But that's not new, though, is it?
No, that's
No,
not
that's
new.
been-
That's-
No, I just
that was-
wanted to make.
That was,
su-
a lot of this stuff came from that handshake agreement that we had. One of the, as Greg said, that we've been going over this for years because I've been trying to do research on our end to say, do we have one? Don't we have one?
That's right.
What's going on? And there's a lot of, like I said, piece of paper that we agreed to this or agreed to that, and everything else was kind of this handshake agreement. And back in the early 2000s, one of the town managers started to draft a formal lease agreement with the church. And I didn't find any further information, but a lot of like I said, it was a handshake agreement between, at that time, John O'Leary, the director of the John O'Leary Center, and the pastor of the church. So we just want to put this in kind of a formal writing, because in 10 years from now, if I'm not here and if Greg's not there, it's,
You want it
That's
written
something.
down. That's a
Written
great
down,
idea.
yeah.
I think it's a good idea, and good to see us going forward with it finally. Because I've been hearing about this for many, many years now, including when that former manager was starting to work on it. If there are no other questions about the lease, Nancy,
I'll do a motion.
okay?
I'd like to move the town council approve the proposed lease agreement with the First Church of Merrimack.
Second.
And authorize the town manager to sign, or?
You need that?
yes, please.
And authorize the town manager to sign
Yes, you want to sign.
whatever documentation necessary.
A motion by Nancy and
Or
and
designate.
seconded by Barbara. Nancy Harrington and seconded by Barbara Healy. If there's no further questions or comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you, Greg. We
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Do you have a formal copy?
I should have added, and we'll sign now.
Well, you got them here.
This-
Sign it.
Raise your right hand. That's right. Solemnly swear. Good night.
Thanks, Greg. That brings us to number 3 on our agenda of new business, elderly exemption discussion, submitted by the town manager, Paul T. McCallie. The town manager to present elderly exemption information as it relates to the increased values with the latest revaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the latest revaluation, we saw that our elderly exemption that we've had for many years at the rates, the elderly population get hit because of the way we do our tax bills, is half of the December and then the remaining balance in December. Well, a lot of our elderly population that was getting the exemption before we did the revaluation, their tax bills were a little bit lower, which is the reason for the elderly exemption. And then they had to pay the full amount because they had hardly any, if any, of the exemption amount left for that big revaluation. So their tax bills went up and they had to pay both the balance. In some cases, it was $1,000, $1,200, and some of the individuals, I had 3 people come into my office and basically have concerns about paying their tax bills. The assessing department, the majority of their calls they got after the tax bills went out were from the seniors who were on the exemptions to about the amount and things of that sort. So I sat down with Lauren Martin, our assessor, and said, okay, what's fair? Let's come up with a solution on this. What I want to do is that we have, it's Garden Bar RSA 7239, elderly exemption. You must be a New Hampshire resident for 3 years, consecutive years, 3 consecutive years. Must be 65 or older before April 1st, or a spouse. The property of which the exemption applies must be the legal residence of the applicants. Property transfers the property cannot be transferred within the last 5 years from a blood relative or marriage. So those are what the RSA's set for the elderly exemption. The town set income limits for yearly net income of all sources, including but not limited Social Security, pensions, IRA distributions. Single is $45,000 and married $60,000. I am not requesting to change those limits, but those are the limits that we have right now. The asset limit is $200,000, excluding the Merrimack residency and up to 2 acres of land. So if an individual has 20 acres of land in their house and it's valued at $210,000, they're not allowed to they're only allowed 2 acres of land and the house value. And those other acres would be considered as part of their income asset limit. They'd be part of that asset limit. So the other 18 acres would be part of the asset limit. Currently, our elderly exemptions, we have 3-tier. First tier is from 65 to 74, and that value is $75,000 off assessed value. Our second tier is 75 to 79, and that is $100,000 off of assessed value. And age 80 and up is $125,000 off of assessed value. So I did some research and said, okay, what was the difference between the tax bills in 2020 and the average tax bill in 21 for each of these groups? So 64 to 74, we have 45 total exemptions. The average bill in 2020 was $3,130. The average bill in 2021 was $3,590, or a $460 difference. Between 75 and 79, which is a $100,000 exemption, we have 51 exemptions. The average bill was $2,714 in 21 was $3,455, or an increase of $741. And 80 and older, which is $125,000 exemption, we have 97 individuals in that category. Average bill was $2,371. That bill in 2021 was $3,242, or an increase of $871. So I looked at raising the exemption amounts in $5,000 increments to see how that would affect the total. And what I tried to do was I tried to be as fair as possible when looking at this to come up with a number that could not be 100%, because values did go up in their homes. So there's that increased value of their house. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to be fair to not only the elderly population, but all taxpayers throughout town. So I was looking at trying to be around the $443, $450, $460 range, which is $40 a month. And that I understand on somebody who's on a fixed income, that $40 a month could be very, very hard for them to come up with. And I understand that. However, I'm trying to look at what's, the best for everybody. And what I came up with was some new limits. The one that really stands out a little bit is the 64 to 74 age group. And we have, like I said, we have 45 of people, and the difference was at $460. So that's what the difference in their tax bill was already. So I looked at how could we be fair with that group. And I said if we raise them up by $10,000, it would be around a difference of $290. And then I said, okay, let's raise the 75 to 79, $15,000, and that would be roughly a difference of $488. And then I said, for the 80 and older, which is our biggest population, and 97 exemptions, to raise them $25,000, and that would be $443. So in looking at it, I tried to, 10, 15, 25, try to keep it in line with kind of the way it is now, 75, 100, 125, to keep those breaks the way they are as best as possible. By doing all of this, it would be 1 cent on the tax rate by increasing these exemptions to those amounts. It would come out to be an extra cent, and because this comes off of the value or the total townwide property assessment value, everybody who doesn't get this exemption would have to pay a cent on their tax rate to cover the elderly exemption. Town council has 2 choices going forward. The reason why I'm bringing it forward to you tonight is because one of the choices is the town council can say, Paul, put it on a warrant article and let the town vote on it, or the town council can take this up as part of the ordinance, because there is an ordinance that garner these elderly exemptions in, in town, chapter 178, and we can change that through the ordinance process. Would be a first read, a public hearing, and then a final read. So that's the information I have. I gave you some other information in the packet to do a break even, or as close to break even as possible on some of these groups. And like for the 80 and older, we'd have to raise the property exemption from $125,000 to almost $181,000 to have them almost break even on average, because 97 homes, I just did average. So there are some houses in the exemption amounts that are significantly high and got hit with a significantly high tax, while others, that didn't. I'll tell you, one of the ladies that came in to see me is, I looked at her property. She came in and she said, it was like $1,100 she got hit. And when I was looking at her property last year in 2020, her tax bill was $80. So basically, her value of her home was in line with the exemption. And it was a little bit more, so it was an $80 tax bill. She was over, so half of 80 is 40, and her bill came out to $1,100. So her value went up that much more on her property that the exemption was already used. So that whole exemption, that whole amount that her property went up, was put on her tax burden. Whereas when we were saying the 37 or 35% that we were going up, if everybody goes up that amount and they don't have the exemption, they're paying the same in taxes. These people, because of the exemption, didn't come into play with how that went forward, if that makes any sense.
I understand what you're saying, but it is a little confusing. Barbara?
I have 2 questions. So what we're looking at for the average tax bill, is that the 6-month split or the year end?
That's the full year.
The full year. And can you walk us through a scenario right from the start of somebody walks in the office, they've got their IRS, 10W whatever, that says, here's what my income was for this prior year, and what happens?
They have to file for every year. They have to come in and file for their exemption. So they have to provide us with a tax return if they do a tax return. If they don't do a tax return, we ask them for investments, all their investments. They'll bring that in. We'll ask them for the value of their IRA, if they have an IRA, and other things. We have some individuals that come in year after year, so the clerk in the assessing department gets to know them quite well, and she understands what to ask for with it. She sends them out a letter and listing all this stuff, saying, you got the exemption last year, here you go, this is everything I need. And then they'll send it in, they say, wait a second, you didn't give me this, you didn't give me that. So they ask for a lot of that information to make sure what's happening, that we get all the information. Then it is reviewed by the clerk in the assessing office. Then it goes to the assessing coordinator, who reviews it for accuracy and checks what's going on. To be quite honest, you want to talk about a group of people who police one another? These people police one another. We've had several people come in and say, hey, I don't want to be the snitch, but so-and-so, you better check him out some more, because he owns a property in Florida too. Or he's trying to get an exemption in South Carolina. So, yeah, so they police themselves pretty good, because they understand that this is significant for them, and they don't want to lose it. They really don't. So they would go through the assessing coordinator. She'd review the application, and if they meet all the criteria and they have all their information and they are within everything, they would then get this put on as an exemption to their assessed value. If they are disqualified for any reason, a letter goes out to them saying they're disqualified, and those people are allowed a chance to come back in and explain why they shouldn't be disqualified. So there's a chance for them to say why they shouldn't be disqualified. We disqualify a lot of people because of income, and because of income, a lot of them get disqualified for that, and a lot of them get disqualified for the $200,000 in assets, because their IRAs are worth a lot more, even though they're only taking $30,000 out of them. So that's why we ask for their IRA balances or their 401k balances or their stock portfolios, if they have any.
Any other questions or comments? So Paul, what these numbers you've highlighted are what your initial recommendation would be?
Initial recommendation. I
Um,
guess what I'm looking for, Chairman, is how the council wants to proceed. Does the council want to, number one, does the council want to proceed with this? Number two, how do they want to proceed? Do they want to send it out as on the warrant, or do they want to take it up as an ordinance and do it through the ordinance process?
Finley?
Well, I think I think it should go the ordinance route as opposed to a warrant. I think that, for me, I think it's our decision to make here. And I'm in favor of this. I understand why we're doing it. I always feel like I have a necessity, though, to point out young families. Because the difference quite often between a young family and an older family is that they're fresh to to a new career start, have babies, diapers, formula, have a mortgage, all these things that can add up, and they're always trapped. There's nothing that the state allows to take care of that end of the equation. And so not that that's anything for us to do tonight, but I just feel it necessary to point out how burdensome some of these things can be on our younger community.
And I believe right now in the State House, there's a House bill that is trying to take that into account. However, it's poorly written,
Yeah.
and I don't think it should pass because of the way it's written. It's too poorly written and leaves too much up to chance. It needs to be more restriction.
I'm glad you're thinking about it.
They are thinking about it.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Give me just another second here. Oops.
Get some math going on.
Yeah, you know, it's just,
Paul or Tom, it would have been done already.
so. So the idea of the amounts you raised were somewhat arbitrary? I mean, you picked some numbers, 13, 15, and 20% increases. I'm trying to figure out if there should be
They were, like I said, I was trying to get around that $460, $40 a month. And it didn't work for 64 to 74 because they were already there at 460. So that's the outlier of my thinking.
Yeah.
But I was trying to get some kind of help for everybody to be in that $480 a month. And my numbers are a little bit lower than what Lauren presented to me as her recommendations. She was a little bit higher meaning it wasn't 290, it was 300, $320, $400.
You were more generous.
I was more generous than Lauren was on this. for it. But yeah, no, and that was the tough decision on it is, you know, coming up with the percentage of, because not everybody is in the same realm. There are some very nice houses that are on
That are
this
getting
list.
$100,000 exemptions and
Yes,
stuff like that.
and then there's other ones,
For years.
yeah, and they have owned them since 1970, and now the value's up on them. And then there's other ones that are, you know, very modest. So it was tough, and I tried to use the average as we went through all of these to come up with these numbers.
So essentially, someone who has a modest house have a fairly substantial assistance,
Yes.
where someone who has a really large, expensive house, they have not quite as,
Correct.
which personally I think is fair.
They have not quite as what? You didn't,
They don't have percentage-wise as much of a break as the people who have lesser.
right, and they didn't see as much of a percentage increase,
Correct.
if you will, because they're paying a larger portion of their taxes to begin with, so that, I
Correct.
think.
Right, they are.
So I think I agree with Finley that we ought to try and handle this
On the,
at the town council level, on the
Okay.
ordinance level.
Okay?
But I don't have a strong feeling from anybody as to whether these are the numbers we want to play with, or whether we want to think about it some more. Barbara?
yeah, I just have a question. The $200,000 net
Income
worth,
limit?
I guess,
Asset?
is
Or
that
asset limit, yeah.
from the state in the RSA, or is that something that was set by the town?
That was
Because
something that
I
was-
don't know too many people that would even try to retire on $200,000 in a portfolio, because it's not gonna last you. Even if you had a couple of stocks or IRA and a retirement fund, because remember, you start drawing off of that, unless you've really invested it well, it's gonna go down, it's not gonna go up.
And that's why the town voted on the $200,000 asset limit back then, is to help the people who need the help, not the people who are retiring with $1 million.
And we really have people who, in this town, who have a tax bill of $3,000?
Yeah.
3,500?
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's the average, so there's got to be some that are lower than that.
Don't know anybody who has that.
But that's after the exemption's removed, right?
Correct. That isn't,
That's
So that's-
that's
the
after
deduction.
exemption.
Or that's with the exemption taken out already, so,
Yeah.
So if you have a $250,000 house and you have
100,000.
100,000 taken out, then you're only
150.
assessed on 150,000.
Right.
Which could be,
That could be
But-
enormous.
but that could be a $3,000 bill.
Actually, it would be, if you had $200,000 home and you're assessed $100,000, that'd be $1,717 would be your assessment. So
So you
figure
double
if you
that as
got,
a
if you got a
double.
$300,000 home, 100,000 off is $200,000 is around $3,400 in tax bill.
There you go. And that's with the
And the
modest
average,
homes.
average is right around 360, like I said, the average home in Merrimack is around $360,000 now. It jumped from 260 to about 360,000.
But
okay.
just to answer your question, Tom, I concur with both of you, that I think we should take care of it. I
Yeah.
don't think we need to go through a warrant. And I also concur with your suggestions, because I think we can tweak back and forth, but I think the way you did it, the rationale was fine. I'm open to other suggestions, but I think that this is a reasonable,
You know,
Barbara?
for other tax cuts that we've done, like say for veterans, we put it on a warrant article and let people decide.
We did?
I think we did.
Yes.
The 500, I think, but
Yeah.
not the,
Veterans
not,
exemption was on
not the
Put on the
disability
warrant.
one.
Not the disability, the other one.
Right, because that was the new one that came out.
it was new.
It was new.
It wasn't a
But-
increase.
Everybody is yelling and screaming about their tax bills. And I think it does two things. I think, first of all, it lets folks know if we do an ordinance, a warrant, sorry, if we do the warrant, it lets people know that we are thinking of the seniors, and this is what it means, and this is the numbers, et cetera. If we handle it in-house, that message doesn't necessarily get out there. And people will ask, well, how come it's set at this rate or that rate, and how come I didn't get to make a decision on it? I'm leaning toward a warrant, even though it's more work. And it may be harder to explain it to people, but that's just my thinking. Because people are always yelling about the tax bills. So they might as well put their money where their mouth is.
Any other thoughts?
Gotta make a commitment.
I'm not 100%, being new on the council, I'm not 100% sure I appreciate the difference. I know Barbara said there was, warrant article was extra work.
Well,
Part of me says there's already an ordinance. All we're doing is adjusting the numbers. We're not establishing a new discount here. All we're doing is adjusting the numbers that are in the article, or in the ordinance for current day.
Based on the valuations.
Yeah, assessments, inflation, everything else. So I guess based on that, I just talked myself into thinking that I probably would support the ordinance.
It's like increasing the fees.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Which,
Nancy
when you
Murphy?
said that, it reminded me, well, we made that adjustment based upon the need. We didn't go through it, so yeah.
Okay. Nancy Murphy?
Yeah, I fully support just modifying chapter 178. It's already, we already have numbers, we're adjusting the numbers. I certainly think that our senior citizens need help. And I did have a question, just on the income, in that same chapter. Was there any thought to changing that income of, I'm just looking at married, I'm not there yet, but 45,000 for, is that a single person, and married, less than
60.
60, so that's like 30,000, pretty much an adult. I mean, I'm not there, so I'm not sure about what one needs, but, I mean, if we're changing that, should there be consideration of changing income? I don't know that income changes that much after 65.
Depends if you're still working.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if that's the only thing that looks like we're not really changing, right? We would be adjusting the exemption, but not reconsidering the income, and I just didn't know if there was a.
My
Gotcha.
rhyme and reason of that, Councilor Murphy, was that what the assessing department brought forward to me, Lauren Martin, the contract assessor, brought forward, was the value. She thought that we were very well fair with our asset limits and our income limits. Matter of fact, she said that Merrimack is pretty generous in their income limits compared to other communities. Because if you really look at the RSA itself, it says that under no circumstances shall an amount determined by a city or town be less than 13,400 for a single person or 20,400. So those are the baseline exemptions that that this RSA is saying. And then it says, excuse me. So, those were the baselines that we want, and you can go up. And she felt that our amounts of income and assets were didn't need to be adjusted. They were adequate at this time.
Nancy?
I would note that on that Title V taxation, it looks like that may have been since 2006, so it's 16 years ago. So that $13,000, whatever it said in there, was 13 years ago. That hasn't been updated for quite a long time, so.
And actually, we did adjust our income limits, and I just don't know when.
It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. Tim Tenave was still on the board. It was one of his last years, because it did go out on ballot.
Sounds familiar now. that you
It
say
did go out on ballot, and we changed the disabled And
both of
the
them.
elderly at the same time to increase the limits of income and assets.
And again, I don't know what the numbers are, but I imagine there's a much greater percentage of people in these age brackets that have no mortgage, that don't, they have no commuting bills to pay for cars and all these piles of things that younger people do have, just because you're starting out in your life. And so, that's why I wouldn't be in favor of changing those numbers, just because I have a sense that they are adequate. But I recognize the need to change the value,
The tax values.
exemption amount. Yeah.
Exemption value.
Thank you.
And if I may, Paul, a warrant article's easy. It's a lot easier than the ordinance. A warrant article
Well, I mean,
is,
if we change the ordinance, we have to have two,
we have to have three
two
meetings.
reasons.
Yeah,
Three
three
meetings.
meetings with it.
Yeah,
So, but a warrant article is
we just
basically,
put it on the warrant.
it's, how do I say this? Boilerplate language that we get from DRA, and
Yeah.
that's it. So, but, yeah, so it's not a lot of work. Either way, it's not a lot of work.
No, but either way, we have to define the numbers that we want to
Yeah.
put forward.
And if we were to move forward on an ordinance, do we define those numbers now, or is that something that comes up on an agenda item and then?
It would be part of the first read when I bring the forward. It'd be part of our first read with the amounts already in there,
Okay.
the defined amounts in there.
So
And
so
then
we
you can
need to
talk about
define
it
the
then.
numbers so you can come forth and do the first
It would be good to
read.
do it
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, if we could do it tonight.
I guess
yeah.
I would be curious to know, so your highlighted suggestions, you say is a 1% impact on the tax rate.
1 cent.
Yeah, is that what I said?
You said
You said
1%.
Oh, sorry, sorry, yes, 1
That'd
cent.
be huge.
That's what I was saying up here. I would be curious to know, if we tried to maintain status quo, I guess it's the bottom line on each one of your charts, what would the impact be on the tax rate if we did that? I don't know if that's calculator type math, or you need a while to,
I can do it in a minute.
It's better
Hold
than me.
that thought. I'm not even gonna try.
Me neither.
Save your life, but I'm not doing the math.
yeah, because that basically keeps their tax bill level, but what is the impact on that? I don't wanna hammer the rest of the town either.
And this is the dilemma we get into when we talked about the veterans and we talk about the disability. This is the kind of conversation we've had in the past. And there has been a duality in consideration, because you want to be able to help our senior citizens or our
Right.
disabled, or acknowledging the veterans. At the same time, it has an impact on the voters. And consistently, I've always been able to weigh the benefits to people. Our senior citizens have, I think we owe it to them as a society, just like we do with the disabled and the veterans. And I think I'm confident that the majority of the people within the town feel it's worth 1 cent. But again, that's a
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yeah, sure.
That's not, and both sides have reasonable arguments. So you just have to come down to what weighs more on the. I was trying to waste time while Paul.
You're doing a great job of filling
I was trying to
filling
fill,
that
you
dead
know.
air. That, we appreciate that.
Because I have a tendency to talk too much. While I'm waiting, real short story. I was at Shaw's, and all of a sudden, someone said, "Oh, I think you're," from the background, "I think you're one of the people that run our town." And I turned around and I said, "Oh, I guess the mask isn't covering me as much as it should." He said, "No, I heard your voice," and I went, I said, "I guess I talk too much." I guess that proves I talk too much. So this is exactly what happened. I'm done filling in space, Paul.
Thank you.
See, it's small.
Now we need to get somebody else to tell us a nice anecdotal
Exactly.
story. But you're right, this is an ongoing concern, and it's difficult to weigh that, to balance that. Just like with the trash fees and everything else. I mean,
Everything, that's right.
every time we try to set a fee or something, it's an issue that we struggle with, Merrimack. It's not like we're just sitting here spending dollars because we have nothing better to do.
And I think the history of the council should be able to demonstrate that there's been great effort, and I think we've been very successful in being able to control and manage the growth in a responsible manner. So hopefully that continues, even because everyone knows the reality of what's happening in the world now in terms of prices. And we're not immune to that, but we could try to control as much as we can. So I think all of us, I think there's some turmoil you'll hear about, but personally, I know that there's been great effort and diligence in being able to be as responsible as we can, and that's all we can do.
And we even have trained the town managers over time and the department managers to come forward with, through,
Yeah.
with reasonable budgets.
We've been fortunate.
Yeah.
So yes, we may have some
And
things,
I think
but
that shows in the lack of audience participation that they're comfortable with the work that we're doing. Obviously, there have been times when people haven't been comfortable, and there've been large crowds, either at this meeting or other town meetings.
Yeah.
And so I always take the lack of active participation as a kind of a sign that people are comfortable, or at least understanding of the work that we're
Understanding is a
doing.
part, yeah.
It's gonna be a few more minutes. I had Tom go down and get me, I need a tax rate sheet. I don't remember it off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I know.
could we do the minutes while we're waiting?
Yeah, please do.
We could do that.
Let's just put this on pause and,
We'll temporarily suspend this
Sorry.
discussion
No, I think we
And-
can still
No,
be
it's good.
productive.
and move to minutes. We have, before we do that, since I have something I missed, I did get a letter from Rosemary Rung for a representative update.
Okay.
And it came in this evening shortly before our non-public meeting, so I didn't catch my mail when I was in the car. But she states, "Dear members of the Merrimack Town Council, I want to update you on a few items. I'm presently serving," this is from Rosemary Rung, representative of the town of Merrimack. "I'm presently serving on the New Hampshire House Municipal and County Government Committee and have been asked to serve also on the Environment and Agricultural Committee. Several bills have come to our committee which potentially impact Merrimack. I want to thank the town manager for his guidance and would like to inquire as to the most efficient way to get the town council's direction. The schedule this term does not allow for much time to make a decision, as it is common for committees to vote their recommendations on a bill the same day it is introduced. My general rule of thumb is to support any legislation which enables municipalities to self-govern. The exception of this was a bill we voted on earlier this week, which would have allowed towns to enact a homestead exemption. In my opinion, there were too many questions of how this would impact businesses deciding to locate to a town, and how it would affect other exemptions and the burden it would place on other taxpayers. It was voted inexpedient to legislate 17-2. In my role on the MCG committee, Municipal and County Government, I amended HB 1397 to allow all New Hampshire counties, not just Rockingham, to extend terms for county attorney, county treasurer, county sheriff, and county registrar of deeds from 2 years to 4 years. It passed unanimously, as did the amended bill. I am considering filing a bill in the fall for certain town offices where the position is essentially a full-time position, for example, town clerk. Number 3, in my role on the MCG committee, I voted against HB 1275, which would have added more city representation onto regional planning commissions. The effect this would have on Merrimack, if passed, would be to dilute our influence on the National Regional Planning Commission. The bill was voted inexpedient to legislate by 16-3 vote. My bill, HB 1185, relative to enabling wastewater treatment facilities to regulate PFAS in effluent, is making its way through the Resources Committee. Want to thank the town manager for his letter of support, and thanks to Ms. Sarita Croce for working with me and the NHMA on an amendment to address impact to private septic haulers. The Resources Committee will be voting on this bill next week with the amendment offered. Number 5, as a response to a constituent concern, regarding limitations on contact lens prescriptions, I submitted an amendment to a germane bill on prescriptions to the House Health and Human Services and Elderly Affairs Committee, which would prevent prescribers from forcing patients to purchase private label contact lenses when identical brands are available on the open market. The committee has not voted on it, but the response during the public hearing was favorable. My bill, HB 1066, would establish a commission to study the health and environmental impacts of cyanobacteria blooms. All water bodies in Merrimack and many throughout the state have experienced toxic blooms. Their occurrence is increasing, and with research showing links to ALS, Alzheimer's, and other neurological diseases, the state needs to develop a comprehensive strategy to manage and mitigate this risk. The Resources Committee, of which Merrimack reps Mary Mayville and Bob Healy are members, will be voting on it Wednesday, February 2nd. As Councilor Murphy can attest, the HB 737 PFAS Commission, of which I chair, is working to support public communication on PFAS risk, exposures, and general updates. Tonight, NHDHHS is conducting a remote town hall to address questions arising from the Merrimack Cancer Study, which was released at our December 2021 meeting. Next week, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ATSDR, is holding a similar event on Wednesday, February 2nd, from 6:30 to 8 Eastern Standard Time. In the evening. They will discuss their health consultation report, which describes PFAS levels in private wells near the St. Cobain site. The report evaluates the potential exposures to PFAS and possible health risks for people with private wells in 5 New Hampshire towns: Merrimack, Litchfield, Londonderry, Bedford, and Manchester. The agency will include an overview of ATSDR, the evaluation conducted, and the findings and recommendations of the report, and how the community can provide comments to the report. There will also be an opportunity for community questions. I would be grateful if the town would promote this meeting, as many of our residents have private wells. Here's the information. They can register at, we'll put this link on the website.
That's what I was talking about in my.
Okay. This is the meeting that you were talking about, okay. Registering a day before the event is recommended. After registering, a confirmation email containing information about joining the session will be sent. That concludes her report. Please let her know if you have any questions. Rosemary Wrong, New Hampshire State Rep, Hillsborough 21. So that files under the comments from state reps.
Have an answer now.
You do? Great. We'll go
Roughly 2 cents
For,
to go down to make everybody.
To go up to 100 and something, and 150 and 180.
Yeah, 107,250, 147,250, and 187,50.
I would think we'd go to like 100 even or something, and 145. I mean,
Say
rather
that
than going to
again.
those
I
funny
misunderstood.
numbers, because they're all based on averages,
Averages,
which doesn't
right.
really mean a whole lot.
Right, so to bring up, the question from Councilor Hunter was, what happens if we want to make everybody whole? No tax increase for these
Okay.
people. It'd be roughly 2 cents on the tax rate. I guess it's 107,250 rounded up or down to, I'll say 105. 147,250 rounded up to 150. 187,50 would probably round down to $180,000, something of that sort. That's to make everybody whole, and it would be 2 cents on the tax rate.
So what you mean by everybody whole is proportionally you'd have the same, okay.
Tax bill in 21 would be the same.
On average.
Proportionally
On
the same.
See,
average.
the problem is there was an increase in valuation.
Correct.
I mean, literally, not just the evaluation change, but there was also an increase in valuation. So everybody, on average, would see an increase.
Right.
To go in and say, well, these people shouldn't see any increase at all, it's maybe a little bit generous.
That was more eloquently said than I said.
Pardon?
That was more eloquently said than what I said at $40 a month.
Okay.
But that would also increase, this is 2 cents.
2 cents, yes.
Everybody else would end up paying that amount, yeah. So I don't have a strong feeling. I guess I'd want to think about these numbers a little more rather than trying to define them tonight, but if anybody has something they want to suggest.
No, if we can move it to the first reading and deal with it at that time, which I kind of think is appropriate.
You only have to do that if it's a warrant, right?
No, first read is an ordinance.
Yeah, so
We'd have to do a
Oh,
first
okay,
read.
so this
then-
is a change of an ordinance,
Right.
so we have to, okay,
Three
gotcha.
meetings, three
And then,
readings.
right, and then second one, bring it to the public
Gotcha.
hearing, and that's when we should have, I think we should have those numbers at
Yeah,
that point, we would need the numbers.
okay, so I would recommend we go with 100, 140, and 180, which are close to those numbers that Paul was
Oh,
just
really?
saying. Based on just an even increment, like it had before, even increments of 25, this makes some increments of 40.
Can you repeat that?
100, 140, and 180,000.
And the basis of that is what?
Just there, I mean, we had $25,000 increments based off 75. If we go up to 100, which gets close to a balance for the 65 to 75-year-old, then we just increment by a common amount from that, the 140 and the 180. Gets them close to those points where the increases are not significant. On the average, now, some people are gonna see increases and some people will see decreases when you talk about the average.
I guess I was more inclined to go with the numbers that Paul had recommended,
I agree.
but I wanted to leave room
Well,
for
they're
discussion.
pretty darn close. I mean, all I've done was average this one down to 100, and then starting from there, go to 140 and then 180.
Right,
Okay?
I'm totally lost. I don't know where you are. Sandy over there.
And you-
So, this is what Paul's recommending.
You're right.
That would be a 1 cent
Yeah,
tax
I've
rate
got that.
impact.
I've got that.
So I asked, what would be the tax rate
Yeah,
impact if
I've got that. I didn't hear what,
so Tom suggested we just round this to 100, round this to 140, and then round this to 180.
that's what I was.
All right.
That's fine. And, I mean, that was just if we were gonna try and make people close to whole. If we wanna stay with the original numbers Paul recommended of 85, 115, and 150, I don't have any problem with that either. I was just trying to get us off of the sawhorse.
I personally like the
He wants
suggestions,
this to go to
but that's
two.
my opinion.
Which one?
180.
The original proposal,
The 85,
correct,
115, and 150?
correct,
You said original?
correct.
So going from 75 to 85, from 100 to 115, and from 125 to 150.
Correct.
Finley?
If the time's appropriate, I'd like to move it to a first reading with the recommendations put forward in this memo of the increases that you just spoke to.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion to make these adjustments through an ordinance change and to move it to a first reading,
'Cause it's the
with the
ordinance.
new values being 85,000, 115,000, and 150,000 respectively for the various age limits. You understand that? Are there any questions or thoughts? That's a motion by Finley. Did somebody second that?
I did.
Nancy Harrington seconded it. Thank you. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0.
Thank you. We'll get this on probably the second meeting in February, and then we'd have the public hearing in March, and then the final read in March, because they have to be in effect before April
April.
1st. So we'll get this thing,
That's right,
ordinance
too, 'cause
done
that's when
before April
due.
1st, so that they're in place for next
The
year's
exemptions
taxes.
are due then.
However, remember, even though they're in place for April 1st, it's still, the first June bill is half of
Last year's bill.
December's bill, so
The old rates will apply.
yes, they will still have to pay half of that in June, and then it'll come out in December.
Yeah, they'll see the big in December.
Yes.
Okay. That brings us to minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes tonight because of our budget hearings. The first one is January 6th. Does anybody have, is there a motion to accept the minutes from January 6th?
So moved.
Moved by Barbara and
Second.
seconded by Andy. Do you have any comments or changes or adjustments?
Yeah. Shall I?
Please.
Okay. On page 2, we have a whole bunch of committees and boards here. They all should be capitalized, so that would be in line 6. It'd be community development with caps. Line 11, planning board, the P and the B should be capped. And the zoning board in line 12 should also be capped as well. And I just wondered, on page 6, there's that paragraph that runs from line 28 through 42. I was wondering if there should be more about the actual RSA in there, because we had talked about it, but they don't really say that the budgeted amount for the Last Rest Cemetery is based on an RSA that says that towns and municipalities must have some kind of cemetery. Do we want that clarification in there? That's up to you.
Paul, did you have, it's up to who, it's up to the council whether we add the RSA in there? Did we mention the RSA or just mention it by reference? Just, we didn't actually come up with a number.
No.
I mean, we could add a statement in there that per state RSA, if that's what you'd like.
My question was, do we need to put that in there so that if someone reads these in 6 months, they'll know the reason we do it is because there's a state RSA.
I think we should do that
Yeah, I agree.
if there's no disagreement. Add some kind of comment to that like that. Anything else?
Nope.
Anybody else? Nancy Murphy?
I'm not sure, but on line, same page, page 7, is line 15, is it supposed to be 50,000 times 1717 or 1717?
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
On line 15, is it supposed to be like $17.17?
Yes.
It just says
Yes,
1717.
so it's missing a period,
It's mere,
or a
yeah,
decimal.
yeah, a decimal and a dollar sign.
Good catch. Any other comments? On line 4 of page 4, it says Chief Levesque then provides the breakdown of the $76,000 salary as follows: $40,000 to $44,000 in wages. Well, the salary is usually considered the wages, not including the health and dental and retirement. So I think that ought to be the $76,000 expense as follows instead of salary.
Good, yep.
Good catch.
Thanks. I missed all those other ones, so. That's all I have, if there are no others. We have a motion to accept the minutes with amendments made by Barbara. Who made the motion? You did. Nancy and Andy? Andy and.
Okay,
You
it's
made
me
the
and you
motion and
second.
Andy seconded it, okay.
That felt like a year ago already.
Yeah, isn't that incredible? If there are no other comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining?
Abstain.
Passes 701 with Finley Rosshouse abstaining.
601.
601. Minor technicality.
We've increased the size to 8.
We'll never get.
I
done
hope
these.
not.
No, that's terrible,
We'll be in past midnight every night.
yeah.
We'd have to change our bylaws or whatever. We have minutes from Wednesday, January 12th. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Nancy Murphy. Yes? No?
Yes. Second.
Seconded by Barbara Healy. Thank you. Are there any changes or adjustments that need to be made to these minutes? Nancy, go ahead.
On page 1, line 15, I'm not sure, it says Mr. McCallie began by sharing that treatment has 2 units. Is it treatment facility or treatment? Wastewater treatment? I don't know, it just feels like it's missing
Wastewater
something.
treatment facility.
That treatment has 2 unions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So wastewater
Wastewater
treatment, yeah.
Or just wastewater has 2 unions.
Wastewater, yeah,
Yeah.
just, I'm sorry, you're right. Good job, Finley.
I wasn't even here. I was listening.
Anything else, Nancy?
That's right, too. You didn't fall asleep, that says something.
If we want to get real technical, on page 2, line 29, when the dollar amount should be a period rather, oh, wait a minute, no, that's right, sorry. Never mind.
Okay.
Actually, how does Sarita spell her last name?
Yeah.
Roche, C-I-R-O-C-E.
Yeah, so there's an extra
There's
H in
an
there
H in there.
Yep.
on line 30. I was thinking that as well.
Hmm.
Go on. That doesn't
Like
look
the
quite-
singer.
One of those is wrong. We just dealt with this.
Yeah,
Does it?
That could be a super.
page 3, the same error.
Yep. So everywhere you find it.
Sounds like a,
Find and replace.
Hmm?
Find and replace.
Yep.
sounds like an autocorrect problem.
Hmm.
Any other comments on the minutes from January 12th? Are we reading them right now, or are we good to go? Nancy?
I actually just have a question. On page 3, line 10, it said that I asked if bids get put out when there is help needed for CSSI. I think what I was asking, if bids were put out to the general contractors and, because it's explained in line 12 that it's usually CSSI. But I think that's just sort of not,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I think what you asked there was that, bids get put out when there is help, or does it go directly to CSSI?
Yes, yep.
I think
And that's not what that sentence
Yeah,
says, right?
That's-
So if you just remove for CSSI,
CSSI,
that
yep.
takes care of that?
Yep.
Okay. Maybe you guys said that and I just wasn't paying attention, sorry.
When, and get rid of there is, when help is needed.
Pardon?
It just sounds a little better, I thought. Asked if bids get put out when
When
help
there is
is
help
needed.
needed,
Well, yeah, there is,
in which Mr. McCallie stated, comma, there is a bidding process in which they get bids.
right, there is, when there
Stated-
is help needed, just sounded off,
stated-
but it's good. I wasn't even here. When there is help needed, when help is
Oh,
needed, I
so
thought.
leave the word there out in front of
There
there?
is.
When help is needed. It wasn't really a big deal. It's like a
Paul's
comma
got it.
kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. Don't look at me like that, Lon, I'm trying.
It's not 10 o'clock.
I'm not saying the word long, I'm steady. That's it.
If there's no other additions for January 12th? Nancy?
Just on page 5, just a dollar sign, line 10. Excuse me, line 9, overall budget up 1.3 dollar sign.
That's a
That
new
would-
way of
Yeah,
confusing people.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. Oh, is it supposed to be percent?
Yeah. I believe,
There we go.
and then the next line is the space.
Yep.
Just can't stand the idea of getting out too early, that's all.
Trying. Okay. We'll call for a vote on January 12th with changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed or abstaining? With one abstention, that's 601, with Finley Rothaus abstaining. Then we have town council meeting minutes. Those were budget review meetings, by the way. Town council regular meeting minutes for January 13th. Do we have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept and present.
Second.
Okay, Nancy Harrington's approved the minutes of, or moved to accept the minutes of January 13th, seconded by Andy Hunter. Any changes or additions?
Nancy has.
Nancy?
Oh, sorry. On page 8, line 16, I think the reconstructure word is not meant to be quite there. Council Healy then asked about parking lot, reconstructure church lot.
So where are you again? I'm sorry.
Page 8, line 16.
16. That doesn't look like the same on mine.
Oh, I'm ahead of you. Wait a minute.
Are you back on the 12th?
am I on the 12th?
Yeah, you were on the 12th.
Sorry. Yep, you're right, sorry. I just noticed that, yep, I was on the 12th.
Okay. Maybe Paul can make that adjustment to the 12th.
Do that.
Sorry.
On page 7, line 15, it talks about Mr. Tenhabe of the planning board will bring in the check. And this is talking about, the person that was asking for us to approve the road. And he's not a member of the planning board, he's a contractor. Okay, so just Mr. Tenhabe will bring in the check to take care of that. That was the only thing I noticed off top, if nobody else has any adjustments or changes. Barbara?
The only question I had was, it starts on page 3, under old business for Flying Eagles. Is that how you spell Mr. Fergalt's name?
Yes.
I was going to look it up, but
That was, we pulled that, or I should say Becky Thompson pulled that directly from his agenda request. But we can double check that, but I believe that's what it was.
Yeah,
No, Becky checked
it looks familiar, but from the agenda, but. Any other adjustments or changes to the minutes of January 13th? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Which brings us to the end of our agenda, being comments from the press and the public and the council. Anybody on the council have comments at the end of the meeting here?
Seeing no comments, I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Lon Woods, seconded by Andy Hunter. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 700. Thank you very much, and good night, Merrimack.